And so let's go to some of the things that happened during Trump's time in office. Yes, Donald Trump, that Republican. Check out the date of this headline here from the New Yorker. That's from 2016. Hate on the rise after Trump's election. Some details. The Southern Poverty Law Center has reported that there were 437 incidents of intimidation between the election on November 8th and November 14th, targeting blacks and other people of color, Muslims, immigrants, and the LGBT community, and women. We're on the graphics here. Let's go to number 3 here, you guys. One woman in Colorado told the SPLC that her 12-year-old daughter was approached by a boy who said, "Now that Trump is president," I remember this when it happened. "Now that Trump is president, I'm gonna shoot you and all the blacks I can find." 12 years old. At a school in Washington State, students chanted, "Build a wall" in the cafeteria. In Texas, someone saw graffiti at work that said, "No more illegals, 1/20/17," in a reference to the inauguration day for President Trump. Hey, here's another one. Check out this date. This is from the BBC. The FBI shows that there was a spike in US hate crimes for the 3rd year in a row. This is November of 2018. Details from that. Hate crimes in the US, again, this is 2018, rose by 17% in 2017. The 3rd straight year that incidents of bias-motivated attacks have grown. That's according to the FBI. Law enforcement agencies reported 7,175 hate crimes last year compared to the 6,121 in 16. According to the report, nearly 60% of those incidents were motivated by bias against race, ethnicity, or ancestry. Yo, I got more. Let's go to politics today. This is from 2019. We're just moving through the years. Hate crimes increased in the US since Trump's election. I think you can figure out where we're going here. Let's go to graphic number 8. This is from Newsweek. Hate crimes under Trump surged nearly 20%, says FBI report. Here's those details. Since we're at 2019 now, we started in 2016, 17. Hate crimes have surged nearly 20% under the administration of President Donald Trump. I wonder where Fox News wasn't asking those questions before. That's according to that FBI report. The report also shows that hate-motivated murders, largely committed by white supremacists, spiked to their highest number in 28 years. There's more. Hate-motivated murders spiked to a total of 51 in 2019, the highest number in nearly 3 decades. Again, maybe those 28 years. That's according to the analysis of the FBI's data, which was conducted by the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism. The next highest number of hate-motivated murders occurred in 2018 with 24 murders. The 3rd highest number occurred in 93 and 95. With 20 murders happening each of those years. There's a little bit more in case you guys haven't been figured out yet where this is all going. The 2019 tally of total hate crimes represents the highest level reported by the FBI in almost a decade. The 2nd highest annual total of hate crime incidents in the last decade occurred in 2010 with 7,699 incidents. So I have another question. When is John Roberts gonna have Leo Terrell on again to talk about all the hate that was increased under Donald Trump? And as a direct result of it, because as we saw, 12-year-olds in school were talking about building walls and I'm gonna kill as many black folks as possible because on the inauguration day of Donald Trump, we have now been unleashed. Maybe ask the people who say things like that rather than assuming all this other stuff and bringing up Dr. King and talking about CRT. Maybe they need a little bit of that education because it seems like they're only being educated by bigots. Got some thoughts here, Conscious? Because I got one.
Hey, education from bigots is pretty traditional, like American Pie. I think that when we start being able to rattle off just a lot of statistics about the normalization of white supremacist violence than Trump, I think that a lot of people just saw it as, the sky's blue, 2 + 2 is 4, and dogs bark. You see what I'm saying? It was just almost like a truism, something that could be expected. And when they started talking about what Martin Luther King would agree with, and they started debating with Martin Luther King's kids about what he would agree with, especially when it comes to things like critical race theory or things like whatever else the hell they mentioned. I've done this little study on TikTok where I've just opened up a video with the Martin Luther King quote, and you'll be amazed at how many Republicans were racially illiterate and thought that this quote came from some critical race theory scholar and actually came from Dr. Martin Luther King. So for me, it just shows that people's willful ignorance and inability to read and write situations pertaining to race usually lead to bad stuff.
Well, they forget the part about how before Martin Luther King Day was actually a federal holiday, how many states were against it. Arizona was still one of them. And they were fighting against that being a national holiday. We know how this works. Until it finally gets to that point, there's always opposition and pushback from it from the folks who hate Dr. King, which again, maybe Leo Terrell can talk about how Dr. King was then murdered. Maybe we can talk about that part because the country was ready for this progress and moving forward. And then when President Obama was in office, how we had a black president. That's Tucker Carlson type of talk. But again, that's why Leo gets paid, because he's pushing those same talking points. So Obama was in office. By the way, that was actually something that changed things. That's one of the things that motivated Donald Trump to move forward with his whole political aspirations, because he's thinking, wow, the country really hates that we have a black president. At least the racists in the country hate that we have a black president, and they're pretty vocal. I think I can capitalize off of this. Part of that.
I also think that this is one of the reasons why they hedge against critical race theory being able to be, I feel like, taught, even though it never was taught in schools like that, is that it gives you a structural analysis or analysis of how the institutions work and how the policy making system works. And I think it allows for certain individuals to come to the conclusion that it doesn't really matter who's the conductor of the train. If the train tracks are still pointing in the same direction and the train is still the same, the conductors may be able to give us more enjoyable music. I think that is a level of abstraction that Ron DeSantis and the gang, you feel me, is supposed to be educators, they're very aware of. Even PragerU, they're very aware of that. Once we start to get more rigorous understanding of politics and how policy works, it allows for you not to be able to piss on our hand and tell us it's raining with these horrible, shallow-like announcements that they give.
But by the way, they've found their group that it won't just eat it up anyway. Because again, maybe, I know it's been reported before, maybe if John Roberts asked Leo Terrell these details about this shooter, maybe he'd rethink talking about how there's no systemic racism. That was the last point, that's right. It was CRT, 1619 Project, and there's no such thing as systemic racism. Why are you bringing up systemic racism when we're talking about this terrorist who ran across looking for black folks to murder? Why does that have anything to do with systemic racism? Because you're just trying to push these same points that make no sense with what we're talking about.
It was a Freudian slip. He ain't mean to say that part. That was I feel like the unconscious part, because usually you're able to just bring up, individuals. It's a lone star, a lone wolf. It's an individual actor. The fact that he evoked 1619 Project, systemic racism, and CRT, I think it's very telling. It shows how individuals are positioned by laws and institutions, and how their position usually allows for them to get certain narratives about different groups that allows for them to see their group as being exposable and disposable. And we're seeing that's what happened with Buddy. You feel me? If your party get money from various organizations that's tied to the KKK or various organizations tied to alt-right groups, and those messages are very in line with what this mass shooter did, I think that the writing's on the wall.
It's an atmosphere that was built. Let's go to graphic 15, because we know the guy's name is Ryan Christopher Palmeter, something along those lines. Who cares? Dude went and killed a bunch of black folks, right? But this is part of that climate, because we have Fox News talking about it. And then about how much black folks don't mean much of anything, and also having Leo Terrell on as their co-signer for it. That's the atmosphere as far as hating and disregarding these folks' lives. This is the part that accesses the guns. Ryan Christopher Palmer is 21, who was 21 years old, had no criminal history prior to his massacre at the Dollar General store that killed 3 black victims on Saturday. He bought a handgun and an AR-15 style rifle earlier this year, both of which were used in Saturday's shooting. The sheriff said this: in this situation, there was nothing illegal about him owning the firearms at that press conference. There wasn't, because our laws allow people like that to own firearms. He had been put in a mental institution years before. They were trying to figure out where his thought process is, how he's possibly a danger to himself. But when you have red flag law proposals, when you have people talking about not having the guns in the hands of so many different people, it's how dare you limit people's Second Amendment rights? Well, this guy just limited 3 other people's right to live any longer in this country. Last one. Before his deadly rampage at the Dollar General store, Palmer had approached the campus of Edward Waters University, a local HBCU, but was turned away by security because he was looking for more black folks to kill. So everyone who talks about how black folks are so lazy, they don't get any jobs, all they do is rob and steal, and they don't go to school, they don't learn anything. As a matter of fact, they don't have the capacity to learn anything. How about all these folks that were at a school attempting to go to class, learn, and continue on with their lives and climb that economic ladder in America, that dream that we always talk about? But this guy decided to run in there and try to shoot up the school. Instead, went to a Dollar General store. which allegedly he let some people out beforehand. Who knows which people those were or why he let those people out, but he was targeting certain folks. They happen to be all the same group. So maybe you should explain that part before we start talking about a lack of systemic racism and CRT 1619 and what Joe Biden did or didn't say. Maybe we should focus on the problem, but they don't want to. They're happy this happened. They're celebrating.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.